Welcome everybody at home, and welcome everybody who's here with us in the room tonight. I'm going to talk about death as the topic tonight, death and impermanence and everything that goes along with it. Death, grief, fear. I'm going to share some reflections. A Sangha member reached out to me, sent me an email this week saying that her elderly father was probably close to dying and wanted to hear some teachings on death. And I've been reflecting on it a little bit, and we'll meditate on it a little bit, and then I'll have some discussion. I think also it's always timely, and it's a very central part of the Buddha's teachings, but especially with COVID and this new way to die that didn't exist last year and exists this year. There's a new virus that we can catch that has killed, I'm going to bring up the death statistics of how many people have died of COVID, as well as all of the other causes of death. And I found a cool website. Actually, right at the beginning of COVID, I was curious, and some of you heard me. I went through the statistics of how many people die every day on the planet, and some of the leading causes of death. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm more interested in our own relationship to the reality that this is an impermanent existence, that life has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that we don't know when the end is, and how natural it is, but also how much we can suffer about rejecting it or denying it, or and that there's also a very healthy form of grief, a natural way to grieve, and healthy way to grieve. So we're going to talk about all that tonight. And there's several different times that the Buddha teaches death meditations. The way that we receive the mindfulness teachings, many of you know this, but as a reminder, the first foundation of mindfulness, which we usually, and I usually give as mindfulness of breath, mindfulness of your body, breathing. First, that's where we start the mindfulness practice. The first opening of the mindfulness teachings is find a place to sit and, have an upright position, and then establish mindfulness. And breathing in, know that you're breathing in, and breathing out, know that you're breathing out. And then the teaching expands to say, now know all of the other sensations in the body too. And then it expands further and says, and know that this body is the four elements, air element and earth and fire and water. And then it goes further and says, know that this body is 32 parts, that there's bones and skin and all of these different organs and tissues, and, inventory what, not just a body, all of the different parts that make up this body. Kind of anatomy lesson. Mindfulness of your own personal anatomy and, just the human body. And then the last piece of the first foundation of mindfulness. Now, all of the mindfulness teachings are directing us towards understanding the reality of impermanence. Even just the breath, you breathe in, you breathe out, every breath is impermanent. Every sensation is impermanent. So the Buddhist word anicca. So we're bringing mindfulness into the body to also experience its impermanence. And then the last part of the first foundation of mindfulness is called the corpse meditation. Or now that you've gotten a glimpse of impermanence, now apply the reality of impermanence to your own life and visualize a dead body and say to yourself, just as this body that I'm visualizing is dead, that will also be the reality for me. That would also be the, sometime this body that's so much alive will be dead and lying lifeless. And so and reminding yourself, the teaching and the meditation is remind yourself, I am not exempt from death. Death is certain. And then the meditation actually gets quite graphic and says, now visualize a body in advanced stages of decay and where the skin is falling off and the organs are rotting and the four elements are dissolving. Through the stages of rigor mortis. And at one point it even says, imagine this body being eaten by maggots, and it's like out, not like we do, where you pump the dead body full of embalming fluid and then pack it in an airtight casket and try to preserve it. It's pretty crazy, but that's the custom. In India, back then and to this day, the custom for Hindus would be to either lay the body out in the open and let it decay or burn it. Ideally, you want to burn the body. Cremation, funeral pyre, outdoor bonfire of the body. And in each step of the way, reflecting on death and decay and reminding ourselves, I'm not exempt from this. And nobody is exempt from this. My loved ones also, whether they die before me or after me, this is the fate of the body. It decays. It dies. Of course, all of this leads to a bigger investigation of how we live our lives, the preciousness of life, the opportunity we have while we're still breathing to be mindful, to develop wisdom, to develop compassion, to develop a wise relationship to death and impermanence. So no, I'm not going to do the corpse meditation tonight, but it's there, and there's other places. I'm going to do a meditation some of you did with me. I think I did it here on a Monday night, and I did it in the Year to Live class. And I'm going to do a meditation that my teacher Ajahn Amaro led on a retreat that I was with him last December in Thailand. And it's called a death rehearsal meditation. Reflecting on your own life. And I invite you to obtain a upright position, a meditation posture. When you're ready, allowing your eyes to be closed. Settling into present time awareness of the breath and body. And establishing an inner attitude of friendliness, kindness, acceptance. And then we'll meditate for this 30-minute sitting as though it's the last 30 minutes of your life. Having lived through all that we've lived through, whether you're new to meditation or you've been at it for decades, this is it, final meditation. last opportunity to see clearly your own mind and heart and body, to respond wisely. Part of mindfulness is letting go of the future, bringing our full attention to the present. So imagine if there was no future, just the next 30 minutes. Excuse me, you only have 28 minutes left. Just now, to feel the breath, to be kind to yourself, to do any forgiveness that hasn't been done yet. If you only had 25 more minutes to live, is there anything worth clinging to? Is there anything worth suffering about? The invitation is to let go of the imagined future and meet the past with forgiveness, with compassion, with appreciation. Allow all of the people who've been kind to you to come to mind. All of the experiences that you've appreciated about this lifetime to be met with gratitude, with appreciation. Celebrate your own life, the ups and downs, the joys and sorrows. As though we were on our own deathbed, letting go of the future. All we have is the present and what arises in the present from the past. Spend some minutes offering forgiveness to yourself and others. Asking for forgiveness to the people that we didn't have the chance to make amends to, that we know we caused some harm to in this life. Please forgive me. Offering forgiveness to all those who harmed us, not for them, but so that we don't have to die with hatred in our heart. Let go. For yourself, not worth clinging. You don't need the anger to protect you anymore. I forgive you as much as I can in this moment. Forgive yourself as much as you can before you die. With only about 20 minutes left. Soften the heart, soften the belly, release the jaw. Forgive this mind that judges and compares. It doesn't know its own worth. It wasn't your fault. keep returning to the present. The mind wanders off, bargaining, denying, rejecting. Come back to this practice halfway through, only 15 minutes to live. Precious opportunity. Opening the mind and heart to all of the people that we have cared about, that we won't get to say goodbye to in the way that we wanted. So we do it in our heart. Thank you. I wish you well. I'll miss you. To our loved ones. Please forgive me for any ways that I've caused you harm. From your heart to theirs. "10 minutes left to live. Let go of the past, let go of the future. Just this experience of each breath coming and going, this human heart and mind. Allow your awareness to be bigger and bigger rather than narrowly focused on the breath and body. Make room for thoughts and emotions and sensations. Expansive and open, spacious awareness. Ajahn Chah often said, be the one who knows. Be the part of your being that is awake, that knows the thoughts and emotions, sensations, that knows the impermanent, the impersonal nature of the arising and passing show of being. How are you going to spend the last 5 minutes of this incarnation? Perhaps you'd like to join me in extending loving kindness in all directions. The wish is for all beings to be at ease. Extending compassion in all directions. Allowing ourselves to feel the pain and care about it, the pain in this world. Extending appreciation, appreciative joy in all directions. Connecting and appreciating all of the beauty and happiness, all of the goodness in the world. And I remind you, for your last couple of minutes of life, the Buddha's teaching, that we could search all realms of existence and never find anyone more worthy of our loving kindness than ourselves. Breathing in your own love and kindness, your own compassion and appreciation. Apparently we all survived death. Taking a moment before we get into conversation or some teachings to just reflect on what just happened in your own mind and heart, and perhaps some important reminders of amends we need to make, or forgiveness we need to continue to work on towards ourselves or others. Just, that's actually even worth taking some notes if you're at home and you have a notepad, or if there's something that, rather than like, oh, I'll remember. Sometimes, you have a meditation like this, it's worth actually sitting down and reflecting a little bit of like, oh, I hadn't thought of that in a long time. But then when I had 30 minutes to live, it all came rushing back. And I do want to follow through rather than going back to sleep, rather than going back into denial or avoidance. If there's some stuff that a practice like this, my sense of a lot of the death reflections in Buddhism are these reminders of how are we going to live? What's our work to do? The precious opportunity in Buddhism. Often they talk about, we talk about this precious human birth or rebirth. And then there's all of this talk about it's so rare and so precious to take incarnation, in this temporary incarnation, in a realm, in an environment where you'll have enough suffering to be motivated to seek the Dharma, to seek meditation, to seek awakening, but not so much that it's unsurmountable. And that you'll be in an environment where you'll have access to transformational teachings. You'll be able to find the Dharma. That this isn't true for everyone, everywhere. There are some people who have incarnations where they don't ever encounter transfer. Nobody knows how to deal with life. Nobody in their life knows how to deal with, they're never taught about the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, and that we can end suffering through our own efforts in this lifetime. So it's considered so precious, and we can just reflect whether, I mean, maybe in this day and age, it's like, well, you could just walk in any bookstore, find a book on Buddhism, and there you have it. There's the instructions. But that's very much in our culture, that's true. That's not true in every culture. There's a traditional practice called the 5 daily Buddhist reflections. And I invite you to listen and reflect on them. It's similar to what we just did, but to maybe actually apply this, do it every day for a week or two. Some of you already do it every day. The first one is, I am of the nature to become sick. I'm not exempt from illness. Just reflect on that. None of us are exempt from illness. I'm of the nature to age. I am not exempt from aging. I am of the nature to die. I'm not exempt from dying, from death. this body, inevitably, death is, it's obvious, but often we keep it out of our mind. Bring it to mind. I'm of the nature to die. Everything, number 4, everything that I hold dear, everything that I love, everyone that I love, will be lost. It sounds a little morose, but this is just reality. We all know this is true. We just don't talk about it that much. Everything that we love will be lost. Everything that we, especially if we cling to it, that we hold on to, not only will it be lost, there'll be all of this suffering about losing it. So part of what we're doing here is trying to train our heart and mind to normalize it and accept. Oh, of course, I don't actually, everything is borrowed. Everything is leased. Everything is temporary. Every relationship, every possession, every, we have all of these like, well, I own this house and this car and this property or whatever. I own my stuff. But then the reality is then the body dies and you don't get to take your stuff. Everything will be lost. Reality. The 5th one, my only true possession, the only thing that I actually own, that I get to take with me, whether I like it or not, the only thing I actually own are my actions, how I behave, my karma, how I speak, how I act, how I volitionally think in my own mind. All of that, what we call karma, is my possession. I'm responsible. I own my behaviors, not my material goods. Those are temporary. And of course, we could get into a deeper conversation about karma, because karma is not just the bad karma, it's also the good karma, right? Like you can also frame this as you own all of the goodness, you own all of the generosity, you own all of the love and all of the compassion and all of the good actions. Dedicating your life to service and to compassion and to positive actions, you own that. You get to, I don't know if I want to say keep it, but from a Buddhist perspective, which is the multiple life rebirth perspective, that's what we take with us, our actions. Certainly not our stuff, but how we show up in this life. Thinking a lot about death. I want to share some statistics about the reality of life and death on planet Earth, what in Buddhism we call samsara. This new way to die that has disrupted the planet in such a major way. There's this, a new way to die. We call it coronavirus. 33.5 million people have now been infected on the planet by coronavirus. There have been over 1 million deaths. 1 million people have died basically this year from this new way to die, this new virus. Almost 25 million have recovered. Active cases 7.5 million people currently have coronavirus. 1% are considered serious or critical, and the other 99% are in mild condition as the current. 25 million people, almost 25, 24.8 million have recovered. 96% of people, 4% of the people have died that have gotten coronavirus, according to the World Health Organization. Statistics, of course, statistics are not totally accurate, but I'm sharing with you what the statistics say. Currently on planet Earth, there are 7.8 billion human beings. There have been 104 million births this year. There have been 43.8 million deaths this year. Today, and this is, I don't know if at home you might be able to see it. No, you can't, it's too bright. It's clicking. It's like an active counter, this website that I'm looking at. So it's not static. It's like right now, and it's like every second someone's dying. Obviously, there's more people being born than dying. That's why population continues to grow. There's 136,532, 33, 34, 35 deaths today. $25,000, just almost 26,000 by the time I finish reading this. 26,000 human beings died of starvation today, died of hunger related. 26,000 people died today. And it goes into the different causes of death. Communicable diseases, almost 10 million. Seasonal flu, 364,000 people have died of the flu this year. Almost 6 million children under 5 have died this year. Close to 1 million suicides so far this year. Again, I ask you just to watch your own mind, hearing all of these numbers, the immense, almost 8 billion humans, all of these hundreds of thousands of deaths, children dying, starvation, the reality on this planet. I mean, really, the Dharma asks us to turn towards reality, to wake up. Not just meditation as self-help of like, how am I going to relax, but really to open up both internally and externally to where am I? What is this life I'm living? In what context am I existing? And we're all existing in this impermanent context. But there's something about I mean, I don't know. Do you think about death a lot? Is it a little uncomfortable to talk about? A little unpleasant? Some people find it depressing, scary. I feel like there's some built-in denial mechanism in most of us about death. Certainly culturally, it's like rude to talk about it on some level or another. It's like, ooh, you're not supposed to talk about death. Of course, I'm a weirdo on a lot of levels. I'm a weirdo, but also my conditioning around death is, when I say weirdo, like different, because since my father was a death and dying teacher and setting up hospices, and I think I have a rare experience and conditioning as a Westerner, as an American, where I grew up around death and it was totally normalized. It wasn't hidden, it wasn't shameful, it wasn't even really a tragedy. It was the outcome of birth, and it was, no one's exempt from it. I was taught that from an early age, from the beginning. So it was always quite normal to me. And I also was talking about this recently, where I then somehow heard about reincarnation, and it landed in me, it sort of fueled a suicidal ideation in my own life, where I was like, oh, well, death sounds like a relief. And like, it's not the end and you get to start over, and that sounds good. And so I know I have a different relationship to death than many people. And I'm not saying that mine's right. Actually, I think that my relationship is a little bit neurotic. It certainly was in my early life. There was a suicidal romanticism about death, fueled by the punk rock, live fast, die young attitude. So a couple more questions. Judy, I know you have a question, but I want to...
I actually wanted to share something with you that's pertinent to this.
Okay, but let me get my thoughts out, because you'll derail me a little bit. So let me finish my thoughts. And first, just a reflection. I want to ask you, the listener, the attendee in the Sangha tonight, what do you actually believe happens when you die? Don't answer, but just bring to mind, what do you believe? Does Buddhism make enough sense to you that you believe in reincarnation? Do you like, and I know that this is true for some of our Sangha, do you like a lot of the Buddhist teachings, but not reincarnation, and you believe in one life, and then this is it? Worm food, lights out, no reincarnation, your karma does not continue. You're done. Some people believe that. Some very serious Buddhists believe that, including teachers that I really respect, like Stephen Batchelor. He said, I'm just rejecting reincarnation. He's like, I love Buddhism and it's great, and the Buddha taught all of these wonderful things, and I'm just going to reject reincarnation as one of the important factors, which is, and I respect him, and he came to that conclusion. And if that's your conclusion, that's fine. Maybe most of us, if we're honest and humble enough, what we actually believe happens at death is, who fucking knows? Who knows? Maybe there's rebirth. Maybe there's an eternal existence after life. Maybe there's lights out worm food. Who knows? But it is, I think, interesting and important to identify what beliefs we're holding about death, because it certainly affects our attitude to life. And I think it also affects how we grieve. When our loved ones die, when people that we care about or die, then what we believe happens after affects how we respond. That having been said, I'll say last couple things. I do believe that no matter what you believe, if you believe in reincarnation, still grief is a healthy and appropriate response to death. It is sadness is a healthy and I don't believe that we get to the place where we're so enlightened and non-attached that when people that you care about die, you're just like, yeah, okay, it's no big deal. It hurts. Now, if there's a lot of attachment, it really fucking hurts. It's brutal. It's devastating. If there's no attachment, it still hurts. Make sense? There's the time, and here's the Buddhist scriptural justification for my view. The Buddha's two best friends die around the same time before he does. Now, the Buddha, fully enlightened, no attachment, total compassion, right? He's the model, the archetype of wisdom, compassion. His two best friends die before he does. And he expresses something like, it feels empty without them here. The loss, even with non-attachment, I'm not attached, but it's still a loss. Like there's two empty chairs here that I'm used to seeing my loved ones in, and they're not here. There's grief. There's sadness. There's the feeling of the loss, and it's appropriate. Okay, I've got some questions coming in, and Judy has a comment. Please share it with us.
I don't know if you remember, but about halfway through the Year to Live class, a good friend of mine was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And we talked a lot about the class and that his lived experience of that he had this now very short window was different from mine taking the class. Weirdly, he died this morning. But 3 days ago, he sent me a text message that said, I did what I needed to do. I just think it's weird that you picked this topic when he died this morning. So he did what he needed to do. And we had talked about the class a lot during the last few months. So interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And also on a personal note, I wonder if there's something here that will help you, something about death, something about impermanence, about karma, about that will help you with your struggle that you're in right now.
I thought about it while we were meditating of letting go of all that.
How
if you think you have no future and you're letting go of everything, what do cigarettes mean?
Yeah.
I mean, nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the bigger piece is just being uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable. My father used to say something like, you know, death is no big deal. Death is totally safe. It's dying that's hard. It's the pain. It's the, you know, most of us aren't, some of us are afraid of death because we don't know what happens. And that's scary, not knowing. But it's really the dying. I just don't want to be in pain. And I can't tell you how many people have said, like, when I get old, I'm just going to check out. If I get sick, I'm just going to check out. Like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be decrepit or, you know, whatever it is. Our attachment to health and ability and all of that, rather than maybe that'll be part of my karma too, to be sick and old and loss of mobility, and that'll be my spiritual practice too. Easier said than done when you're healthy. A whole nother thing. So what do you, please, a couple questions in the room. If you have questions at home, please raise your hand in the participants piece, raise the little blue hand, and then we can dialogue, please.
Yeah, this is a really good one. I've been reading Thich Nhat Hanh. I think that's how you pronounce it. He talks all about death. And I was wondering if this concept too, if you can apply it to not if the person physically dies, but maybe they just leave your life. Like recently I had someone that went separate ways, and you know, the grief, and it may not be like an actual death, but it's the death of maybe a friendship, and that grieving process is normal, and it's like you can no longer talk to that person. You know, I mean, you could, but they're still alive, but it's like the death maybe in a different sense.
Yeah, I think for sure. The question was about, you know, when there's loss of a friendship, loss of a relationship, can we also treat that a bit like a death? And it feels like a death sometimes. Divorces, breakups, feel, you know, it's like there was a living connection, and now it's no longer there when that connection is over. And there's grief, and there's sadness, and there's missing, and there's resentment, there's appreciation, and there's... So absolutely. I mean, the core is impermanence. Whether it's an impermanence of a life, or if it's impermanence of a friendship or a relationship or an experience. I mean, core Buddhism 101, the most central, I feel like in so many ways, the most central teaching is the truth of impermanence. Both internal, everything in us constantly changing, and external, everything outside of us constantly changing, which means beginning, middle, death, end. Each experience is a death, and it's over. Never happen again. That experience. We practice loving kindness, we practice compassion in order to tend to the unpleasantness of loss, in order to respond wisely to the reality that we're constantly experiencing loss. Practice non-attachment to make it less painful. The more attached, the more painful. But as I want to again say, even with absolute non-attachment, still unpleasant, still painful. Please, Lindley.
I just wanted to share, even after 18 years of my husband's passing away, just like last week, I just had this grief that, like, you know, we were supposed to grow old together, and he's not here. And I'm kind of like, at 56, I'm kind of feeling some old age stuff, and it's kind of, and I had about like an hour or so where I just got really sad, and I miss like that part of life that we had kind of planned, and then he didn't show up for because he died. So there's a letting go that you sometimes, not sometimes, but it'll creep up on you, and you have to let it go again.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that, that even 18 years later, the mind sometimes, the heart, whatever we want to call it, will remind us of the sadness that we felt, that sometimes we're not feeling, but that it'll come back. This process of grief, there's not this, like, you just grieve it and then you're done. It's an ongoing, when you've loved deeply, your mind's gonna often miss and feel sadness. And the Dharma helps us feel our feelings, feel the sadness. It's appropriate. And it also helps us feel the joy. And, I started the meditation with, reflect on, if you really had 30 minutes to live, just reflect on all of the joy you had in this lifetime. And all the people that were kind to you and loving, and the opportunities you had to be kind and loving, and celebrate it too, right? There's this balance of celebration and appreciation and grief and sorrow. The Chinese Buddhist, Taoist image of yin and yang, of the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of a life well lived. And if we don't live our lives very well, then maybe we have 19,000 sorrows and only 1,000 joys to reflect on. We don't get the balance. Questions at home? I don't see anybody raising their hand. I don't know if that function's not working or you guys just don't want to talk to me. Okay, Amanda, please.
I'd like to know either your perspective or more broadly the Buddhist perspective on suicide.
Okay. Question, could you hear it? The question was my perspective or more broadly the Buddhist perspective on suicide. I actually don't know any suttas, any like early Buddhist suttas are the name of the scriptures, the early teachings, where suicide is directly addressed. I think there are some, but they're not coming to mind. There is, I was with Ajahn Amaro, who's a Buddhist monk. I know that the Buddhist monks believe that, so we take this vow in Buddhism, whether you're a monk or you're a layperson, the first precept is to a vow not to kill, not to intentionally take the life of any living being. And so for us householders, something that we do, but maybe we don't take it that seriously on some level when you're killing the ants in your kitchen or you're swatting a mosquito or the fruit flies. Some of you take it very seriously, but many of us householders maybe are a bit lax about insecticide mass murder. And we make that differentiation between animals and insects and humans. A lot of people would kill a lot of animals and insects that wouldn't kill human beings. But of course, that vow is a vow that says, I vow, I take on the precept to not take the life of any living being. It doesn't say any other living being. It doesn't say, I vow not to kill other people. It says any living being. And it's just like in loving kindness where we say, may all beings, as I ended the meditation tonight with that reminder, all beings, you could search all realms of existence and you couldn't find any, it doesn't say others, all includes ourselves. So technically, my understanding, Buddhist, first I'm giving you the Buddhist, and then I'm going to give you my opinions. Buddhist vow of non-killing includes not to kill ourselves. I know the monks take this so seriously that it's one of the things that if you intentionally take a life, especially a human life, you're no longer a monk in the Theravadan tradition. It's one of the I forget what they call it. Do you know what they call it, Jason? Where it's like, it's the expellable, you know, if you break that vow and you kill, you can't be a monk or a nun if you've killed. You're out of the gang. And Ajahn Amaro was giving this teaching on death on this retreat that I was doing last year with him. And he was telling this story about how Ajahn Chah, his teacher, like the lineage holder, just before he had a stroke, he had given this public talk that said, I'm sorry, I'm going away from suicide. I'll come back to suicide. He gave this publicly, it had even been recorded. He said, if anything happens to me, that I'm wounded, that I'm ill, he said, no extreme measures, that kind of do not resuscitate, or no extreme measures that we have like in our medical. He said, please don't go out of your way to keep me alive. I'm an old man, I've lived a good life. Don't get extreme about trying to keep my body alive. Shortly after that, he had a major stroke. And they did an intervention and they kept him on life support. And he never regained consciousness, really, for 8 years. And there was all of this argument within the monks of, well, he wanted us to unplug him. Let's unplug him. But the person, if a monk made the decision, it would be considered killing, even though it was his wishes. And so the monks are very serious about, like, nope, we can't take life ever, even if we sort of knew it was his wishes. I can't participate in killing. It's against my vows. From a Buddhist perspective, live your life, live out your karma, do the work to heal, to forgive, whatever pain we want to kill ourselves about, whether it's physical or emotional or psychological, we actually can learn to hold it, to manage it, to be with it. This is the Buddhist perspective. Burn off the karma, live out your life. This is the Buddhist perspective, I believe. Some Buddhists, this is my interpretation. And then I have this other conditioning from my father, who was like part Buddhist, part Hindu, who totally believed in assisted suicide. And maybe that's something that makes sense to a lot of you. And he thought suicide was a necessary option and that everybody has the right to take their own life. And that if you're in a situation that you want to choose to no longer live, that is your right. So I can also kind of get and that's not, I can get my mind around that. I certainly don't want to force anyone that actually consciously, and I think there's even sort of a healthy way for some people to say, I'm done living. I want out. Terminal illness or something that just feels unmanageable. What I don't think Buddhism has is a kind of a judging, if you kill yourself, you're going to have a really bad reincarnation. If you hear that, that's bullshit. But if reincarnation is true, and this changed my suicidal ideation, is because when I started to really realize, oh shit, if I kill myself, I don't get like I don't just like get out and start over, and I bring all of my karma and all of my suffering with me if reincarnation is true. So I'm killing myself to escape my pain, but I'm bringing that shit with me into the next lifetime. If reincarnation is in fact what's happening here. So I don't know. Buddhism says live it, heal it, turn towards it, even terminal illness. Go into hospice, get the medication, but live your life, let your body, let the kind of natural process take place. Don't kill even yourself, is the Buddhist teaching, I believe. But then, you know, you don't have to be a good Buddhist. You find your own way with it. Do what makes sense to you. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Welcome. Was there something specific there, Amanda, that I didn't really cover that you wanted me to?
No, that was very specific. I heard that question asked once to another teacher, and he said something similar to what you just was a bullshit response. And it just didn't really sit well with me, like that
About
you
it
would be
being
reincarnated.
about like being bad
Yeah,
karma.
about yeah, and I just was curious about your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. The last thing I'll say about that is, when people do choose to kill themselves, all of Buddhism and karma comes down to intention. And a lot of times it seems like people kill themselves at someone else. Really mad at someone, really like, I'm going to kill myself at you. I'm going to do it in a messy way that causes harm to the people that cared about me. And I think there's probably some karma in that. That's a very unkind thing to do, to kill yourself at someone else. But sometimes people kill themselves and they write the letters and they say, it's not your fault, I love you. And they kind of, what we might call finishing business. They do all of the right things and say, like, don't blame yourself, I just need out. And it seems like a very different intention. And like, so the karma would be very different if there's karma involved in it. Okay, a couple more, let's see. If you go with the samsara reincarnation concept, suicide doesn't help. Suicide comes from a place of attachment and pain. Circle right back around. Yeah, similar to what I was just saying. Having lost a loved one to suicide, this pain is real and stays forever. Even though their life ended, mine lives on. Yep. Richard up in Sonoma says, we're having fires and evacuations again here in Sonoma County. There was a story about a man who was trapped in his burning house earlier today, and I envisioned what that experience would be like. Clothes burning, skin charring, fat dripping off bones, smelling burning flesh, and beyond pain beyond any preciously known. I was wondering how a person could make that passage into no longer being alive in that state, and how could they stay in a mindful state as you're passing away? Right now, only worthy of reflection, otherwise unfathomable. Thanks for tonight's rehearsal. That was a very graphic image, Richard. Thank you for that. It brought mind to me those Buddhist monks who did the self-immolation in Vietnam in protest of the war, where they, some of them successfully set themselves on fire and had that experience of their body burning and dissolving without moving. That sort of advanced level of concentration, meditation, could bring us to a place of unbearable pain without flinching. And then there was other monks who tried to do it and set themselves on fire and got up and ran down the street on fire going, what the fuck did I just do? I do not have that kind of concentration and I'm on fire. Quang Duc. I encourage you this week to consider doing the 5 daily reflections. Sickness, aging, death, loss, karma. Reflect on it. Bring it into your mind and into your meditation, and do it every day and see how, different kind of awareness you bring into the world when you're thinking about shopping. Do I really need these shoes that I don't get to keep? Maybe the answer is yes, I need these shoes temporarily. we'll leave it there for tonight. Again, I'm sharing only pieces of the Buddha's teaching. There's a fuller context for it each week. I unpack some part of the Buddha's teachings tonight, exploring death. Reflect on it, see if it's useful to your own process of awakening. Class is done by donation. If you're at home, there is a link to the donation in the chat, againstthestream.com/donations. Please consider supporting Against the Stream, even though you're not showing up in person. Many people become monthly supporters, and that helps me pay the rent here on the Meditation Center. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Your donations are tax deductible. Judy just made me some prints of this awesome painting of like this monk being attacked by these Maras, demons. And she encouraged me to offer this print, which are worth money. They're very fine art for anybody who knew monthly supporters. And I complained that like, then I have to mail stuff. I hate mailing stuff. Maybe I should just send them all to my mom, who's up there in the corner, and she's so good at mailing stuff. She mails out all them t-shirts and all that stuff. So maybe we'll do that, because we do need some more financial help. So many of you are helping, and thank you so much for helping financially. Support the center while we're kind of open, but only a handful of people are showing up. So thank you for the support and generosity. May any goodness that comes from our practice be shared outward in all directions with all living beings. May each one of us live fully and try to die peacefully when that time comes. Together, may we create a positive change on this planet. All right. See you next week.